The notification chimed 3 times before Jasper Reeve bothered to look up from the protein paste he was pretending was dinner. His ship, the Wandering Echo, groaned around him, metal complaining about metal in that particular way that meant something expensive was about to break. Again, the screen flickered to life, displaying a message that made his stomach drop. Velkari diplomatic vessel requesting docking clearance. Priority status. Jasper set down his meal, appetite gone. The Velkari didn't do requests. They did demands, usually followed by compliance or death. He'd only dealt with them once before, 8 months ago, when he'd pulled a damaged transport out of a collapsing slipstream gate. He hadn't asked for thanks then. He certainly hadn't expected any now. Clearance granted, he muttered into the cum, knowing refusal would only make things worse. Through the forward viewport, he watched the Velkari ship approach, all sharp angles and dark metal, like someone had hammered midnight into a blade. It moved with predatory grace, dwarfing his converted freight hauler. The Echo shuddered as the diplomatic vessel's docking clamps engaged. Metal shrieking against metal. Jasper stood slowly, his hand instinctively brushing the plasma cutter he kept clipped to his belt. Not that it would matter against Velkari armor, but it made him feel slightly less helpless. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of pressure equalization. The Velkari envoy who stepped through wore ceremonial armor the color of oil slicks, trimmed with silver that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Behind him, a hover platform glided forward, carrying a stasis pod covered in scorch marks and hastily applied patch welds. "Jasper Reeve," the envoy said, his voice resonating through a translator that stripped away any hint of emotion. Not a greeting, an identification. "That's me." Jasper crossed his arms, fighting the urge to step backward. "What do you want?" 8 cycles ago, you rendered aid to Velkari official 3rd caste remnants. Your actions prevented significant loss of Imperial resources. The envoy gestured, and the hover platform rotated, revealing the occupant of the stasis pod. Jasper's breath caught. She was Velkari. That much was obvious from her elongated features and the deep violet hue of her skin. But something was wrong. Her limbs twitched in slow, erratic patterns, and silver-blue circuitry visible beneath her skin sparked and misfired. Biomechanical implants ran along her arms and spine, beautiful in their complexity, but clearly malfunctioning. Her eyes were closed, but even unconscious, her face held an expression of pain. "This is Nivara," the envoy continued. "Combat designation revoked. Neural integration failure rate, 94%. She has been classified as defective material." "You're giving me a person?" Jasper heard himself say, voice rough with disbelief. "Not a person. A failed asset. Imperial law mandates recycling of defective units, but exceptions are made for those who have rendered unusual service." The envoy's head tilted fractionally. "You may dispose of her as you see fit. Use her for parts. Sell her. Keep her. The Empire's interest in this unit has terminated." Jasper felt ice spread through his chest. "Get off my ship. She is yours, whether you accept or not." To refuse would merely confirm her worthlessness. The envoy tapped a control on his gauntlet. "The stasis field will deactivate in approximately 1 hour. After that, her survival is your responsibility." "Or not." The envoy turned and walked back through the airlock without another word. The diplomatic vessel disengaged 30 seconds later, its engines leaving a bitter taste of ionized particles in the Echo's recycled air. Silence flooded back, broken only by the soft hum of the stasis pod's failing power systems. Jasper stared at the woman inside. Nivara. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, irregular rhythms. Through the pod's transparent surface, he could see a surgical scar running along her temple, too precise to be a battle wound. They'd opened her skull, done something to her mind, and then decided she wasn't worth keeping. His hand clenched into a fist dot. He should sell the pod, strip the tech, dump her at the nearest station, and let someone else deal with it. That's what the smart play was. That's what the Jasper from 3 years ago would have done without hesitation. But 3 years ago, his brother had still been alive. The memory hit him like vacuum exposure. Tobias, 17 years old, dying in a station med bay while Jasper screamed at administrators who cited protocols and regulations. His brother had needed a simple genetic treatment, something trivially easy to obtain in the core worlds. But out here, on the frontier, they'd required authorizations that took weeks. Weeks Tobias didn't have. The officials had looked at his brother's convulsing body, the same way that Envoy had just looked at Navarra like he was broken equipment. Not worth the effort to repair. Jasper had failed Tobias. He'd been powerless, watching someone he loved die while bureaucrats shuffled forms. He wouldn't fail again. His fingers found the emergency release on the stasis pod. Warning lights flickered as he overrode the safeties. The pod's lid hissed open, releasing a wash of cold vapor and the sharp scent of medical gel. Navarra's body settled onto the padded interior, still unconscious. Still twitching, Jasper slid his arms beneath her, surprised by how light she felt, despite the dense biomechanical implants. Her skin was cool and slightly damp from the stasis fluid. She didn't stir as he lifted her, didn't respond at all. But he could feel the faint flutter of her pulse against his arm. "I've got you," he whispered, not sure if he was talking to her or to the ghost of his brother. "I've got you." The wandering echo wasn't built for passengers. It was a converted hauler, all cargo space and cramped quarters, with exactly one bunk that Jasper had claimed as his own. He carried Navarra to the storage bay he'd been using for spare parts, quickly clearing a space and dragging in the emergency medical cot he kept for his own injuries. The lighting in here was harsh utility strips that cast everything in stark white. He dimmed them manually, adjusting the color temperature to something warmer, softer, less like an interrogation room. He laid her down carefully, pulling a thermal blanket over her trembling form. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, and the implants along her spine pulsed with irregular patterns of light. A medical diagnostic pad mounted on the wall gave him readings that made his throat tight. Severe neural pathway damage, systemic rejection of cybernetic components, multiple cascade failures in her motor, control systems. The Velkari had tortured her with repairs that weren't meant to work. They'd sabotaged her own body and then thrown her away. Jasper pulled up a chair, settling in beside the cot. Through the small viewport above, stars drifted past in their eternal dance. The echo groaned again, a reminder that he had his own repairs to worry about. But for now, in this moment, someone else needed him more. Navarra's lips moved, forming soundless words. Jasper leaned closer. "Or in the Chi 40 ... She whispered, voice barely audible. Then silence, a code, a location, a memory locked behind damaged neural pathways. Jasper reached out slowly and adjusted the blanket, making sure she was covered. "I don't know what they did to you," he said quietly, "but I'm going to help you figure it out. No protocols, no regulations, just ... help." Her face remained still, lost in whatever darkness the Velkari had left her in. But somewhere in the back of his mind, Jasper felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Purpose. He stood, taking one last look at her before heading to the cockpit. The Echo had supplies that needed restocking, medical equipment that needed acquiring, and he needed to find somewhere safe, somewhere far from Velkari space, where no one would come asking questions. The ship's navigation computer flickered to life as he sat down, displaying dozens of possible routes through the frontier territories. Jasper. selected the longest one a path that would take them through 3 unmapped systems and past 2 dead zones where even the salvagers didn't go time. They needed time, and maybe, if he was lucky, they'd both find something more than survival out there in the dark. The wandering Echo's engines hummed to life, carrying them away from the station and into the void. Behind them, the Velkari diplomatic vessel had already vanished, its duty discharged, but in the storage bay, beneath a thermal blanket and surrounded by the soft sounds of a ship in motion, Navara's breathing began to steady and deep in her fractured mind. A dream stirred not of pain, but of music, the sound of strings being plucked in a quiet room, the warmth of something she couldn't name but desperately wanted to remember. Human kindness. She'd known it once, before they took it away. Perhaps she would know it again. The first thing Navara became aware of was the absence of pain, or rather, the absence of the specific pain she'd grown accustomed to. No diagnostic needles piercing her neural ports, no restraints cutting into her wrists, no cold metal table beneath her spine. Instead, there was warmth, softness, the gentle hum of engines that didn't scream, orders into her fractured consciousness. Her eyes opened slowly, expecting the sterile white of a Velkari medical facility. Instead, she found dim amber lighting and curved metal walls patched with mismatched panels. Not imperial architecture. Human construction, rough, improvised, held together by determination rather than precision. She tried to sit up. Her body refused, muscles and machinery arguing over who had authority. A sharp jolt of pain lanced down her spine, and she gasped, the sound emerging as more of a growl than she'd intended. Easy. The voice came from her left, low and careful. Your neural interface is barely holding together. Fast movements are going to hurt like hell. Navara turned her head slowly this time and found herself looking at a human man. Mid-30s, perhaps, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that held the particular weariness of someone who'd seen too much and slept too little. He sat in a chair that had been pulled close to her cot, a datapad in his hands and grease stains on his fingers. Jasper. The name surfaced from her fragmented memory banks. The human who'd carried her from the stasis pod. Why? The word came out raspy, her vocal processors struggling to coordinate with organic tissue. Why what? Jasper set down the datapad, giving her his full attention. Why did you take me? Navara's golden eyes fixed on his face, searching for deception, for the hidden cruelty she'd learned to expect from every living thing. The envoy told you to dispose of me. Why didn't you? Jasper was quiet for a moment, his jaw working like he was chewing on his answer. Finally, he said, because I couldn't. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He stood, moving to a small counter where a tin cup sat beside a water dispenser. He filled it and returned, offering it to her. Can you drink on your own, or do you need help? Navara stared at the cup. It was such a simple thing, worn metal, dented at the rim, holding nothing but water. Not a nutrient solution. Not a chemical compound designed to keep her combat ready. Just water. She tried to lift her arm. The biomechanical limb jerked, sparked, and finally responded, fingers trembling as they closed around the cup. Jasper didn't move to help, didn't rush her. He just waited, patient as stone. The water touched her lips, cool and tasteless and perfect. She drank slowly, feeling the liquid slide down her throat, feeling alive in a way she hadn't in cycles beyond counting. Better? Jasper asked when she'd finished. Navara nodded, the gesture sending minor feedback errors through her motor control systems. How long was I unconscious? About 18 hours. Your body needed the rest. Jasper took the cup back, setting it aside. I've been trying to map out your neural damage. It's extensive. Whoever did your last maintenance didn't want you recovering. That was the point. Navarra's voice was flat. Defective assets are eliminated. The envoy delivered me instead of executing me because the Empire wanted to humiliate someone who'd inconvenienced them. By making me watch you die? Jasper's tone hardened. That's twisted even by Imperial standards. You don't understand Velkari. Navarra shifted slightly, testing her body's responses. Pain flared and subsided. We don't value individuals. We value function. When function ceases, so does existence. You're not dead yet. I will be soon. She met his eyes. My neural integration is collapsing. Within days, maybe weeks, my cybernetics will completely reject my organic systems. The cascade failure will kill me. Jasper leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. What if I told you I might be able to stop it? Navarra went very still. You're human. You don't have access to Velkari medical technology. No, but I've got something better. Improvisation. He picked up the datapad again, showing her a screen filled with schematic diagrams. I've been running diagnostics on your implants. The sabotage is sophisticated, but it's designed to look like natural degradation. Someone wanted plausible deniability. The medical technicians, Navarra said softly. They told me it was routine maintenance. They lied. Jasper's fingers moved across the screen, highlighting sections of code. But here's the thing about sabotage, it follows patterns. If I can identify those patterns, I can work around them. Reroute the damaged pathways, stabilize the integration points. It won't be pretty, and it won't be by-the-book Velkari medicine, but it might keep you alive. Navarra stared at him, her processors struggling to categorize this behavior. Humans were supposed to be selfish, opportunistic. Every briefing had taught her that. Yet this one was offering to spend his time, his resources, his knowledge to repair someone he didn't know, for no apparent benefit. Why would you do this? She asked again, quieter now. Jasper set down the datapad and looked at his hands. I had a brother, Tobias. 3 years ago, he got sick something treatable, something easy to fix if you had the right connections or enough credits. We had neither. His voice went rough. I spent 2 weeks fighting through bureaucracy while he died. Every official I talked to looked at him like he was a problem to be filed away, not a person to be saved. He looked up, meeting her eyes. When that envoy dropped you off, I saw the same look. Like you were garbage. And I decided I was done letting people die just because someone else decided they weren't worth the effort. Silence filled the small room. Outside, the ship's engines maintained their steady rhythm, carrying them deeper into unmapped space. I don't know how to respond to kindness, Navarra finally said. They removed that programming. Good thing it's not programming, Jasper replied. You don't have to respond at all. Just let me try. Navarra closed her eyes, feeling the constant ache of her failing systems, the weight of countless missions and erased memories. Part of her, the part that had been trained to be a weapon, wanted to refuse. To maintain distance. To die with the cold dignity the Empire had instilled in her. But another part, smaller and buried deep, whispered a different truth. She didn't want to die. She wanted to live. She wanted to understand what it meant to be more than a function. All right, she said, opening her eyes. Try. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of pain and progress. Jasper worked with the focused intensity of someone performing surgery. His tools spread across a makeshift workstation, while Navarra lay on the medical cot, neural ports exposed to the recycled air. This is going to hurt, he warned before each procedure. And he was never wrong. He bypassed corrupted pathways, rerouted signals through intact channels, and manually recalibrated connection points that had been deliberately destabilized. Every adjustment sent fire through Navarra's nervous system. Organic and synthetic signals colliding in ways her body wasn't designed to handle. She didn't scream. The Velkari had trained that weakness out of her. But her hands clenched into fists, her jaw locked tight, and sometimes small sounds of pain escaped despite her best efforts. Jasper never looked away, never flinched. He worked with steady hands and quiet apologies, taking breaks when her vital signs spiked too high, offering water and soft words she didn't know how to accept between procedures. They talked. "Tell me about your brother," Navara said during one rest period, her voice hoarse from controlled breathing. Jasper paused in his work, tools still in hand. "What do you want to know?" "Anything, everything." She shifted slightly, testing her newly recalibrated left arm. It responded smoother now, with less delay. "You speak of him like he mattered." He did matter. Jasper set down his tools, his expression softening with memory. "Tobias was younger than me by 5 years. Brilliant kid, could take apart any engine and put it back together better than it started. He wanted to be a ship designer, create vessels that could go places no one had mapped yet." "Past tense," Navara observed. "Yeah." Jasper's voice went quiet. "The sickness took him before he could finish his first design. I've got his journals, though. Sometimes I implement his ideas on the echo. Keeps him alive, in a way." Navara processed this. The Empire would call that inefficient. Honoring the dead doesn't serve function. Maybe that's why your empire creates weapons instead of people. Jasper met her eyes. "What about you? Do you remember anything from before they made you into a soldier?" The question triggered something deep in Navara's damaged neural architecture. Images flickered across her consciousness, fragmented, incomplete, but there. A room with glass walls. Blue lights casting everything in an aquatic glow. Small hands are hands, but younger, unmodified, pressing against the transparent surface. And music. Someone playing an instrument with strings, the notes resonating through the glass. "I remember music," she said slowly. "Human music. I was young, I think. Before the combat conditioning." Jasper leaned forward. "Where were you?" "I don't know. The memory is corrupted." Navara's brow furrowed with concentration. There were humans present, working alongside Velkari technicians. "I remember feeling curious. Is that the right word?" "Sounds right." Jasper's expression had shifted to something intense, focused. "Navara, the Velkari and human governments haven't had joint operations in over 2 decades. If you remember humans working with your people, that means you're older than you look. Or something very unusual was happening." "I was designated Navara Experimental at creation," she said, the designation surfacing from buried files. "Not Navara Combat or Navara Tactical. Experimental." "They were testing something," Jasper said quietly. "Using you as a prototype." "For what?" "I think I might be able to find out." He stood, moving to his datapad and pulling up dense blocks of encrypted code. "You keep repeating a phrase in your sleep. Orinth Kai 40. I've been running searches." Orinth Kai was a joint research station, decommissioned 18 years ago after a political incident between the Velkari Empire and the Human Confederation. Navara sat up straighter, ignoring the protest from her spine. "What kind of research?" "The records are sealed, but the fragments I've found mention neural integration studies. Cross-species emotional synthesis." Jasper looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. They were trying to create soldiers who could think like humans, adaptive, creative, emotionally intuitive, while maintaining Velkari combat efficiency. And I was the experiment. The words felt hollow leaving her mouth. "Not just an experiment. According to these fragments, you were the successful experiment. The only one who survived the integration process." Navara's processors raced, trying to reconcile this information with what she knew of herself. If I was successful, why was I decommissioned? Maybe that's exactly why. Jasper set down the datapad. Think about it. You became something neither fully Velkari nor fully human. Something new. Something that didn't fit into anyone's military doctrine. Maybe they decided you were too unpredictable, too dangerous. Because I could feel, Navara whispered. Because you could feel, Jasper confirmed. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Finally, Navara spoke again, her voice barely audible. There's more, isn't there? More buried in my memory. Your neural architecture has multiple encrypted partitions, Jasper said carefully. I could try to access them, but do it. Navara, it could trigger a complete systems crash. You might not survive. She met his eyes, her expression fierce despite her exhaustion. I've been dead for years, Jasper. They killed who I was and tried to reprogram what remained. If there's a chance I can remember, can reclaim even a fragment of my original self, I'll take that risk. Jasper studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. But we do this slowly, carefully. And if anything starts to go wrong, I'm pulling the plug immediately. Agreed. He returned to her side, tools in hand, and began the delicate process of accessing her deepest memory partitions. Navara felt the intrusion like fingers pressing into her mind, gentle but insistent, seeking passages through walls she hadn't known existed. Then, without warning, the walls crumbled. Memory flooded through her in a torrent. The research station, pristine and humming with activity. Velkari scientists discussing genetic markers with human neurologists. A man-human, dark-skinned, with kind eyes, who brought her books and taught her to read. His name was Marcus. He called her Niv, not by her designation, and he played guitar during the evening cycles when the station grew quiet. He was the one from her dream, the one who'd made music, and there was more, the day everything changed. Alarms blaring, Marcus shouting at the other researchers, arguing that she was sentient, that the project couldn't continue without consent. The Velkari administrators overruling him. Marcus trying to help her escape, being restrained, dragged away. His last words to her echoing across the years. Remember who you are, Niv. Don't let them take that from you. But they had taken it. They'd stripped away Marcus, the music, the kindness, everything that made her more than a weapon. They'd locked those memories behind encrypted walls and rebuilt her into something cold and efficient. Navara's eyes snapped open, tears streaming down her violet cheeks, biological response her body had retained despite all the modifications. Jasper immediately pulled back, concern etched across his face. Navara, talk to me. What happened? I remember, she gasped. I remember everything. Who I was. What they took from me. Who were you? Jasper asked softly. Navara looked at him, this human who'd chosen to save her when everyone else had thrown her away. And she felt something stir in her chest that the Velkari had tried so hard to erase. Hope. I was someone who was loved, she said quietly, by a human named Marcus who taught me that existence meant more than function. He tried to save me, and they erased him from my mind as punishment. Jasper's expression softened. He sounds like he was a good man. He was. Navara reached out, her hand trembling but steady, and touched Jasper's arm. The gesture felt foreign but right. Like you. Jasper didn't pull away. What do you want to do now? Navara considered the question. What did she want? For so long, want had been programmed into her, not chosen. But now, with her memories restored and her system stabilizing under Jasper's care, she could feel genuine desire forming. I want to live, she said finally. Not as a weapon or a failed experiment. As myself. As Navara. Then that's what we'll do, Jasper said, and the certainty in his voice made her believe it might actually be possible. Outside the wandering echo, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small rebellions happening within one battered freight hauler dot, but inside. In the warm amber light of that converted storage bay, two broken people had found the beginning of something neither had expected, a reason to heal. And healing, Navarro was learning, was its own kind of strength. The asteroid field known as the Scattered Teeth hung in space like frozen debris from a cosmic brawl, thousands of tumbling rocks ranging from pebble-sized fragments to continent scale behemoths, all spinning through the void in chaotic patterns that discouraged even the most desperate salvagers. It was exactly the kind of place Jasper needed. The wandering echo drifted into the field's outer edge, thrusters firing in careful bursts as Jasper navigated through the tumbling stone. Navara sat in the co-pilot's chair, her golden eyes tracking the asteroids with the precision her combat training had never quite left behind. "There," she said, pointing to a massive hollowed-out rock spinning slowly on its axis. "That one has stable rotation and enough mass to mask our energy signature." Jasper glanced at her, impressed. "You've got a good eye for this. Tactical assessment was part of my core programming." She paused, then added more softly, "Though I'm trying to think of it as a skill now. Not just programming. That's progress." Jasper guided the echo toward the asteroid, matching its rotation before settling the ship against its pocked surface. The hull groaned as magnetic clamps engaged, anchoring them in place. "We'll be safe here for a few days. I need to replace the primary coolant manifold before it gives out completely." Navara nodded, already running diagnostics on her own systems. Over the past week, Jasper's improvised repairs had stabilized her neural integration to the point where she could move without constant pain. Her biomechanical limbs still sparked occasionally, and her motor control remained imperfect, but she was functional. More than that, she was improving. "I'd like to help with the repairs," she said. Jasper raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Your hands are still unreliable." "I know." Navara flexed her fingers, watching the slight tremor that ran through them. "But I need to learn. I can't spend the rest of my life being carried." Something in her tone made Jasper pause. He set down the navigation controls and turned to face her fully. "Navara, you know you don't have to earn your place here, right? You're not a burden, aren't I?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. "You've spent the last week repairing me, feeding me, keeping me alive. What have I given you in return?" "Your healing," Jasper said simply. "That's enough." But it wasn't enough for Navara. The Velkari had trained her to be useful, to serve a function, and even with her memories restored, that conditioning ran deep. More than that, though, was a growing feeling she didn't quite have words for, yet a desire not just to survive, but to contribute, to be part of something rather than a weight someone else carried. "Please," she said quietly, "let me try." Jasper studied her face, then nodded. "All right, but we start small. And if your systems start acting up, you stop immediately. Deal?" "Deal." They worked in comfortable silence, Jasper's hands moving with practiced confidence while Navara watched and learned. He showed her how to identify stress fractures in the coolant lines, how to properly seal connections to prevent leaks, how to test pressure levels without risking an explosion. Her hands trembled at first, the fine motor control still damaged from the Valkyrie sabotage. She dropped tools, fumbled connections, felt frustration building in her chest like static electricity. But Jasper never showed impatience. He simply retrieved whatever she dropped, guided her hands to the correct position, and let her try again. "You're getting better," he said after she successfully sealed her third connection in a row. My accuracy rate is still only 67%, Navarro replied. The tactical assessment automatic. Stop thinking like a soldier. Jasper handed her another tool. You're not being graded. You're learning. There's a difference. Navarra paused, the tool hovering in her hand. The Velkari don't believe in learning curves. You either perform or you're replaced. The Velkari are bastards. Jasper's tone was matter-of-fact. And you're not one of them anymore. But I was. The words spilled out before she could stop them. I was their weapon, Jasper. For years before they decommissioned me, I followed orders. I hurt people. Her voice caught. I killed people. Efficiently, without question. Jasper set down his tools and turned to face her fully. Tell me. What? Tell me what you did. If it's eating at you this badly, get it out. Devera's first instinct was to refuse, to lock those memories back behind walls where they couldn't hurt anyone. But she'd spent too long trapped behind walls. If she was going to be more than a weapon, she had to face what the weapon had done. There was a human settlement, she began, her voice distant. Small colony on a border world. The Empire claimed they were harboring deserters. They sent me with a tactical unit to neutralize the threat. And did you? Jasper's voice was neutral, not judging, just listening. Yes, I was efficient, precise. I eliminated 17 targets before the settlement surrendered. Navarra's hands clenched into fists. Later, I accessed the after-action reports. Only 3 of the 17 were actual military personnel. The rest were civilians, farmers, engineers. One was a teacher at the settlement school. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush bone. I remember her face, Navarra continued. The words coming faster now, like poison being drawn from a wound. The teacher. She tried to protect her students, putting herself between them and my weapon. I shot her anyway, because my orders were to neutralize all resistance, and she was resisting. How long ago was this? Jasper asked quietly. 4 years. Maybe 5. Time runs together after a while. Navarra looked at her hands, at the biomechanical fingers that had pulled that trigger. When Marcus was teaching me on the research station, he used to say that consciousness meant choice. That thinking beings could choose to be kind or cruel, helpful or harmful. I chose to pull that trigger, Jasper. I chose to kill that teacher. Did you, though? Jasper leaned forward, his expression serious. You said you were following orders, that it was drilled into you. Where was the choice in that? I was conscious. I could have refused, and they would have killed you, reconditioned you, or found someone else to do it. Jasper's voice was firm. I'm not saying you're not responsible. What you did happened, and that teacher died. But you weren't given a real choice. You were a weapon someone else aimed and fired. That doesn't absolve me. No, Jasper agreed. It doesn't. But it does mean you're not the same person who pulled that trigger. You're not following orders anymore. You're making your own choices. That matters. Navarra felt something hot and tight in her chest. A feeling her biological components recognized even if her cybernetic processors couldn't quantify it. Grief, guilt, and underneath it all, a desperate hope that maybe, somehow, she could become someone worth more than the sum of her past actions. I don't know how to atone for what I've done, she whispered. Maybe you don't, Jasper said. Maybe you just live differently going forward. Be the person that teacher would have wanted you to be. Make choices that honor her memory instead of continuing the cycle that killed her. Navarra looked up at him. This human who'd seen her at her worst broken dangerous, carrying the weight of uncounted sins, and still chose to help her. Why don't you hate me? Because hate is exhausting, Jasper replied. And because I know what it's like to carry guilt that feels like it'll crush you. He was quiet for a moment, then continued. When Tobias died, I blamed myself. If I'd been faster, smarter, richer, more connected maybe, I could have saved him. I spent a year drowning in that guilt. What changed? I realized he wouldn't have wanted that for me. Jasper's voice grew rough with emotion. The last thing Tobias said to me was, "Don't stop flying. Jas, someone needs to see what's out there." He wanted me to live, not to punish myself for his death. So you kept flying. So I kept flying. Jasper met her eyes. And now you keep living. Not because you've earned it, or deserve it, or any of that philosophical garbage. Just because you're alive, and that means something. Navarra felt tears threatening again, a biological response she was still getting used to. I'm not sure I know how to just live. Neither do I most days, Jasper admitted. But we'll figure it out together. Together. The word resonated in Navarra's chest, warm and foreign and impossibly precious. She'd been alone for so long, even surrounded by other Velkari soldiers. She'd been fundamentally isolated. Tools didn't have companions. They had operators, but Jasper didn't treat her like a tool. He treated her like a person, like someone whose thoughts and feelings and choices mattered. Jasper, she said softly. Yeah? Thank you. For everything. He smiled, the expression transforming his tired face into something gentler. You're welcome. Now come on, we've got about 6 more connections to seal before I'm confident this manifold won't explode. They returned to work, but something had shifted between them. The silence was no longer just comfortable, it was companionable. A shared space where words weren't always necessary, because understanding ran deeper than language. 3 days later, Navarra took her first real steps without assistance. They'd been testing her motor control in the cargo bay, a wide-open space where she could practice without worrying about crashing into delicate equipment. Jasper had offered to rig up support bars, but Navarra had refused. She needed to know what she could do on her own. The first attempt ended with her on the floor, legs refusing to cooperate, frustration burning through her circuits. Jasper had simply offered her a hand up and told her to try again. The second attempt got her 3 steps before her knee locked and sent her stumbling. Jasper caught her, steadied her, let her go when she was ready. The third attempt, she made it halfway across the bay before her system started misfiring. But she'd walked, actually walked, under her own power, without pain splitting her spine or her legs giving out. When she turned around, Jasper was grinning like she'd just done something impossible. That was at least 30 meters, he said. 27.4. Navarra corrected automatically, and caught herself. Sorry, tactical assessment. Don't apologize. That's incredible progress. Jasper walked over to meet her, and without thinking, Navarra reached out and took his hand. The gesture surprised them both. Navarra, because physical contact without violence or necessity was still foreign territory. Jasper, because he hadn't expected her to initiate it, but neither of them pulled away. I couldn't have done this without you, Navarra said, looking down at their joined hands, her violet skin and biomechanical plating against his calloused human fingers. 2 entirely different species connected by something as simple as touch. You did the hard part? Jasper replied. I just gave you the space to heal. That's more than anyone else has ever given me. They stood there in the cargo bay, hands clasped, neither speaking. Outside the echo, asteroids tumbled past in their endless dance. Inside, something else was taking shape, something neither of them had quite acknowledged yet, but both felt growing stronger with each passing day. Not just gratitude, not just companionship. Connection. Real, genuine, chose to be here connection. Navarra's processors had no category for this feeling. Her tactical databases offered no protocols. But her organic heart, The part of her that was still purely biological, still capable of emotions. The Velkari had tried to erase recognized it. Instinctively, she was beginning to care about this human. Not because programming demanded it. Not because survival required it. Simply because he'd shown her kindness when the rest of the universe had shown her cruelty. And that kindness had taken root in the wounded soil of her consciousness and started growing into something she didn't yet have a name for. Jasper, she said quietly. Yeah? When this is over, when I'm fully healed, what happens then? It was the question that had been hovering between them since the moment he'd opened her stasis pod. Navarra was getting stronger. Eventually, she wouldn't need constant care. And then what? Did she leave? Stay? What did this human want from her? Jasper was quiet for a long moment, his thumb unconsciously stroking across her knuckles. I guess that depends on what you want, he finally said. The echo isn't much, but there's room for two if you want to stay. We could, I don't know, see what's out here together. Find places neither of us has been. Maybe track down more information about Orinth Kai. See if we can find out what happened to Marcus. You'd want me to stay? Navarra's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, Jasper said, meeting her eyes. I would. Why? Because you're brilliant and brave, and you're trying so damn hard to be better than what they made you. He squeezed her hand gently. And because I like having you around. It's that simple. Simple. Nothing in Navarra's life had ever been simple. But maybe that was the point. Maybe simplicity choosing to be with someone because you wanted to, because they made existence feel less heavy, was its own kind of revolutionary act. I'd like that, she said. Staying, seeing what's out here, finding answers together. Together, Jasper echoed, and the word felt like a promise. They stood there a moment longer. Then Navarra gently pulled her hand back. I want to try walking again. Make it to the other side of the bay this time. You sure? Your systems have been active for a while. You might need rest. I'll rest when I've made it across. Navarra turned, facing the far wall of the cargo bay. Her legs trembled slightly, the biomechanical components already tired from the earlier attempts. But she could feel something new beneath the fatigued determination. Her own determination, not something programmed into her. She took a step, then another. Her gait was uneven, her balance imperfect, but she kept moving. Behind her, she could feel Jasper watching, ready to catch her if she fell, but not interfering. Trusting her to do this herself. Halfway across, her right knee started to lock. She compensated, shifting weight to her left leg, ignoring the protest from her neural interface. 3/4 of the way, her vision started to blur with fatigue. She blinked it clear, focused on the wall ahead dot, and then her hand touched metal. The far wall. She'd made it. Navarra turned, breathing hard but smiling, actually smiling, an expression that felt strange on her face, but right somehow. Jasper was grinning back at her, pride evident in his expression. Told you, he called across the bay. Don't be smug, Navarra replied, but there was warmth in her voice. I'm not being smug. I'm being impressed. There's a difference. Navarra laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she'd laughed? Years, probably. Maybe never, not since Marcus and the research station. But she was laughing now. And across the cargo bay, Jasper was laughing with her. And for this one perfect moment, the weight of both their pasts felt just a little bit lighter. Outside, the asteroid field continued its ancient rotation, indifferent to the small rebellions and quiet triumphs happening within one battered freight hauler. But inside the wandering echo, two people who'd been broken by different empires were learning that healing didn't mean forgetting the past, that it meant choosing. Every day, to build something better with whatever pieces remained. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, You found someone willing to help you carry those pieces until you were strong enough to carry them yourself. Navara looked at Jasper across the expanse of the cargo bay. This human who'd given her back her life and asked nothing in return, and felt something click into place in her chest. She didn't have to be a weapon anymore. She didn't have to earn her existence through violence or utility. She could just be Navara, and that was enough. Ready to walk back? Jasper called. Navara nodded, taking her first step toward him, toward whatever future they'd build together. One imperfect step at a time, and as she crossed that distance, she realized she was no longer walking away from her past. She was walking toward something new, toward home.